Medical diagnostics is the engine of modern healthcare. Every day, millions of biological samples are processed to catch diseases before they become fatal. But the mechanical processing of tissues and chemical analysis of blood are only half the equation. Without formal, legally binding verification, that data cannot be used to treat a patient. The entire weight of medical liability and the authority to act on a diagnosis rests on a single point of failure: the authorized signature at the bottom of the laboratory report. This brings us to a highly specialized and frequently misunderstood subset of diagnostic professionals, the MDS oral pathologist. Looking at these two reports, one signed by a general MD pathologist and the other by an MDS oral pathologist, the legal standing is identical. Despite common misconceptions, professionals holding a Master of Dental Surgery in oral pathology possess explicit statutory authority to sign clinical pathology, hematology, and biochemistry reports. To understand how this works, we have to look past assumptions and examine the actual clinical curriculum, specific federal exemptions, and the framework of the Indian Evidence Act. In a strictly regulated healthcare sector, diagnostic capability only matters if you have the legal jurisdiction to apply it. The confusion surrounding this authority stems from long-standing institutional friction, driven primarily by the Medical Council of India. Under Clause 1.1.3 of their Code of Ethics, the Council has traditionally maintained that laboratory reports can only be signed by doctors registered directly within their own system. This monopolistic approach was tested during a 2017 ruling by the High Court of Delhi. The court determined that laboratory professionals holding an MSc or PhD in fields like biochemistry could not provide independent clinical interpretations. They were restricted to processing samples and required a registered medical cosigner for the final diagnosis. This established a rigid regulatory boundary. For overlapping medical branches like dentistry, claiming diagnostic authority now required concrete, undeniable proof of their clinical domain. The argument against oral pathologists often assumes their expertise stops at the teeth. Biologically, systemic diseases, malignancies, and immunological disorders do not recognize the boundary of the oral cavity. This document from the British Society of Oral and Maxillofacial Pathology outlines the international academic baseline. It explicitly expands the discipline from oral pathology to encompass broad head and neck pathology. The curriculum mandates competency in ENT pathology and lymph node dissections of the neck. The Dental Council of India incorporates these same rigorous standards into its revised MDS course regulations. Under these regulations, the curriculum strictly requires oral pathologists to perform and interpret routine hematology, clinical biochemistry, microbiology, and even advanced molecular pathology. The required academic training covers the entire systemic diagnostic spectrum. This exhaustive clinical preparation forms the foundation for their legal diagnostic authority. In November 2017, the Directorate General of Health Services convened a subcommittee under the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare to standardize medical diagnostic laboratories. During deliberations, the Medical Council maintained only their registered doctors should sign lab reports. The committee rejected that monopoly. As noted in Point 2, they ruled signing reports by those with an MDS qualification in oral pathology may be allowed as per Dental Council Act. The government recognized that laboratory work related to oral and dental diseases requires specialized interpretation, a clinical function addressed directly by the MDS curriculum. 4 months later, in March 2018, the Ministry of Health convened again and expanded this specific ruling. This signatory authority applies to all levels of diagnostic facilities, from basic clinics to advanced laboratory centers. Federal health regulators officially categorized this as an overlapping scope of practice, acknowledging that multiple branches of medical science share critical diagnostic responsibilities. By issuing these minutes, the Ministry of Health established a statutory carve-out. It explicitly protects the diagnostic jurisdiction of oral pathologists from any overreach by general medical councils. Having federal minutes on paper is one thing, but if an oral pathologist faces a direct legal challenge regarding their jurisdiction, they have to prove that authority in a courtroom. That defense relies on the strict parameters of the Indian Evidence Act and the updated Bhartiya Saksha Adhiniyam. This pyramid illustrates how the court evaluates proof. The foundation is primary evidence, defined under Sections 62 and 57 as the highest, most indisputable tier of legal documentation. DCI regulations are published directly in the Gazette of India, holding the weight of primary evidence. Sitting above that is secondary evidence. This tier relies on certified government records to validate how those primary regulations are executed in daily operational practice. To secure this evidence, practitioners utilize the Right to Information Act. By formally requesting data on the daily operational protocols inside government dental colleges, they compel public authorities to go on the record. When a state-run institution replies under official seal, confirming that the oral pathology department routinely processes and signs hematology and clinical pathology reports, it ceases to be an opinion. It becomes an irrefutable legal admission of scope. With primary evidence proving the curriculum and secondary evidence proving the real-world application, the oral pathologist's authority to sign diagnostic reports is fortified against civil and medical disputes. This legal framework translates directly into the accreditation standards used by the National Accreditation Board for Testing and Calibration Laboratories, or NABL. In India, the NABL functions as the supreme quality control authority for diagnostic facilities. Before granting accreditation, they ruthlessly vet the legal and academic qualifications of every proposed authorized signatory. Looking at this approved NABL accreditation document, the evidence is clear. The board officially recognizes professionals holding an MDS in oral pathology and microbiology as fully authorized signatories for hematology and clinical biochemistry reports. This recognition allows specialists to legally open, direct, and assume liability for their own advanced diagnostic centers. Modern healthcare operates as a matrix of overlapping specialties. The sheer volume and complexity of diagnostic data require a system where competence determines capability. Diagnostic jurisdiction in modern medicine is a product of specialized dedication, objective clinical skill, and the statutory authority to back it up.